We are recording the meeting so that we can place it online for those that couldn't join us today. Because of that, we do just ask you remain on mute and wait to ask questions until the end so we can get the presentation recorded. And then everyone is welcome to unmute and ask questions. We'll have a lot of time for questions and answers at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Iverson, our Sustainability and Resilience Director.
Thank you, Shauna. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Good afternoon now, or 12:03, so good afternoon. My name is Eric Iverson. As Shauna said, I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Director for the city. And I'm here sharing this presentation with Greg Kinkle, one of our consultants with this project. We're very lucky to have this local firm in Tempe that's helping, that specializes in green construction and is helping us to put together this proposal for our code. And then, of course, this is a partnership project at the city and with multiple departments. And so our community development team, which oversees the building codes at the city, has Mike Baxley, the Deputy Director from Community Development, that will also be part of our presentation today. Just a couple things on this opening slide before we get into the bulk of the presentation. This is a project that has been undertaken for about 1.5 years. It is part of our city's Climate Action Plan update that was adopted by the council in the spring of 2022. And we have really been working since then to put together this green construction code. We are looking at initially to do a voluntary code for the city. And however, we will be asking the council for all buildings in Tempe that are built by the city to have those engage this green code. And we will talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. So we're asking the city to make a commitment to build green with our buildings, but the private development side, we will be looking at a voluntary code initially. Want to also say that we presented this to the council in the fall of, the last time we presented to the council was in the fall of 2022. And so really now what we're doing is this is in the final process of public involvement, and we want to take it forward for code adoption through the council process, the formal council process this fall. One final thing on this slide. This is something really important to us in the world of sustainability and really just in Tempe in general. Being green and doing things that are sustainable is part of our brand in Tempe. And this particular element of our Climate Action Plan, green building, or the International Green Construction Code, is really part of moving Tempe forward as a sustainable city and constructing the best built environment that we can into the future. So with that, also our action today is we're seeking feedback from the public on our draft chapters for the Green Building Code and any other feedback you want to share with us that we can then share with the council as we move forward with formal adoption of this code. I will go to the next slide. So these are the items that we will, also we want to take questions at the end of the presentation. So we're looking at about 12 minutes of a presentation, and then we will take Q&A. So really what we're going to share today is what is the International Green Construction Code? What is green building? What does it mean for us? And then we have draft chapters that will highlight some of the things that could change in the way our built environment is constructed in Tempe. So we'll share specifics of what that means. And then we'll share a little bit of the timeline for adoption of this code as it goes through the council process. And then again, share a little bit of information about the ask that we will put before our council to build all of our municipal buildings, all of our city buildings with this green code. Every effort, construction effort or policy or program that we have at the city is attached to performance measures that the council has supported. These are things that help steer us, give us measurable goals for the city. And so the Green Building Code hits on many things that are important to the council as well as to the community. And really it's looking at building a community that's more sustainable in the long term, reducing our potable water consumption, being better with water conservation, reducing our fossil fuel dependency and our greenhouse gas emissions. So you can see here the performance measures listed are all being addressed partially through this green building code. And then with those initial slides, I'm gonna go ahead and hand this off to Mike Baxley, who's our Community Development Deputy Director over Building Safety, and he's gonna go through the next couple slides.
Thank you, Eric. So in a nutshell, what is the International Green Building Code? Well, it's not a full-blown build everything code. It is basically an upcode to what the current building codes are that the city has adopted. It'll enhance our baseline building code. Buildings still have to be built to our standard building code, but this is going to put a new level on there for them for water savings, for creating shade on a building, for having a more resilient construction, how they use their materials, and to keep them from overusing our landfills when getting rid of those kinds of things. The idea is that we're going to be able to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by the use of the Green Building Code. You can see in the chart to the right here that we have done pretty good strides in transportation in the blue. You see from 15 to 20, we went down. However, on the building side, we didn't go down, but that's where the Green Building Code is going to go in, and it'll help drive this number down to where we'll show greater savings for our community and greenhouse gas emissions. Go ahead and next slide, Eric. As part of the code, you'll see that we are focused on chapters 5 through 10. There's 10 chapters in the Green Building Code. Chapter 1 is an administrative portion of it, so we didn't change anything in there. Chapters 2 and 4 are reserved for future use. There's nothing in there. And chapter 3 is definitions. So what we're focusing on today is talking about the 5 chapters here, 5 through 10. 5 is site sustainability. That's going to talk about how that building is sited on the property. It's also going to deal with heat island impacts, where we might use trees or shading or other structures to help shade the building, so that way we lower the heat island effect that construction may have. It also will focus on light pollution, bicycle parking, and then also it gives a nod to electric vehicle charging too, and what we are looking at in the city. Chapter 6 will be water use efficiency. That's going to bring in those low flow water fixtures. They'll actually use less water. Energy efficiency is in chapter 7. We're talking about lighting, electric, and driving down that electric cost. That helps overall. Those high commercial demand electric buildings will actually be reduced in needs for power. Indoor environmental quality, we'll talk about and look at air filtration, making sure that the buildings are safe for everybody to be in, that they aren't sick, that it also has all of the equipment tested to make sure that it works at its optimal performance, and not necessarily just operating at a partial level. Materials and resources talks about how those materials and resources are sourced, where they come from, and also, as I alluded to earlier, what we do with the waste. So that way we're not overfilling landfills. And then chapter 10 is all about commissioning. That's the making sure that all those equipments and processes in a building are working at optimal performance at the point in time when they bring them online. And with that, Eric, I will turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Mike. So before we hand it over to Greg, who will go through some details of the code development and things that we've learned, wanted to give you a little bit of history as to how we got here today. I've shared with you that this effort of establishing a green building code in Tempe is something that was identified in our climate action plan. It's something that we have included in our 2021 sustainable facilities plan. So that was the plan that looked at all of our buildings citywide. And then of course, efforts towards sustainability show up in our general plan, our current general plan 2040, as well as in the proposed general plan 2050. We have a history of doing green buildings in Tempe. Since 2008, we have opened multiple green buildings, including the transportation center where I'm at today in downtown Tempe, and our East Valley Bus Operations and Maintenance Facility, which is out on Rio Salado and 52nd Street. Both of those were done utilizing many elements that you will see today and that we're talking about in our green building code, but they were done under a green building guidance called LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's very similar to a green building code. So those two buildings and others have been built in Tempe, and we continue to learn from them and get good feedback on the best way to advance a green building code in Tempe. Also, as part of our work, in addition to looking at the buildings that we've already constructed, we have a couple case studies that Greg's going to go through of current projects that are under construction in Tempe, and we're engaging certain green elements in those projects to understand how they best perform and help guide the development of the language in our code. We also have looked at peer cities from the region as well as around the globe to see how they've developed their green building code. And really all that has been to help inform the best Tempe code that we can have that's appropriate for our climate and the particular conditions that we have here in Tempe. We also, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, we have presented updates to the council in 2022. And so this is our third presentation to council. We will be going to a council committee next week. And we are going to other boards and commissions right now to get their feedback, including next week going to the Sustainability Commission. We also, assuming we get adoption of this code, there is a position in building safety that is posted today, as of last week, that will be a green codes plan reviewer to help assist with any green building that we do in the city going forward, and have an expert on staff that can help guide that. Ultimately, we will share the calendar of our next steps in later slides, but wanted to go to the next slides, which show the case studies that we have been looking at in the last year to understand how certain chapters of the Green Code could be applied to a variety of different projects. And again, to really refine and shape our specific code in Tempe. So we looked at a park site, a facility site, and a fire station. And all of those are, there's larger and smaller sites. There are a diversity of sites that have been giving us a lot of good information to put together the language for the code. Again, these are all part of the learning and the exploration that we're doing in order to have the best code possible to advance to you all today. And with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Greg Kinkle, who is gonna go through some of the specifics of each of those different projects that I just mentioned and what we learned from them.
Thanks, Eric. Like Eric said, we had a really unique opportunity as we went through the codes to be able to learn and actually practice these on real life buildings and actually look at how that could impact it and to have lessons learned with real Tempe buildings. The first building that we kind of worked in getting the green codes implemented in the design was the Tempe Municipal Operations Center, so the TMOC project. So in this project, larger site, multiple buildings, but still a city building, and having more of an industrial and some office aspects in there, we're able to look at all areas of the code and try to apply them into this building. One of the areas that specifically we learned in this was with acoustic and air testing. So as we're going into here, we found out that air testing, acoustic testing became a very costly matter for the project. And we wanted to look at this and decipher, is this valuable to the city of Tempe? Is it cost effective? And as we kind of went in there and looked at the project, we found that we were meeting many of the requirements for acoustics and meeting many of the requirements for low VOCs in here, but finding not a lot of value in actually getting some of those things tested. So we were able to look at elements of the code and say, what are areas that we naturally are meeting, but maybe we can adjust to make this code more affordable and cost effective for projects as they move forward. And they were also able to look at other municipalities that had adopted codes, the IGCC codes, looking at like Scottsdale and seeing what areas they kind of amended and see what other cities had learned. And so this was one area where we saw we could make some adjustments and remove some requirements so that it was a good code that really made sense for the city of Tempe on city of Tempe buildings and volunteer projects that wanted to do it. Next slide. Perfect. The other project that we worked through was our fire station project. So we looked into fire station number 2 and looked specifically at areas that were important. So one of the areas that came up was, how do we deal with EV parking in here? So fire station number 2, there is a requirement that you have EV charging, carpool requirements on there. And we looked at this, and this is a costly aspect of the code. But we also looked at, what does city of Tempe really want to see in their cities and what's important? And looking at that, it's still an important thing for green buildings to have, is to address this EV charging and transportation aspect. So when we were addressing challenging things, was how can we work with this to make it a little bit more flexible and work for a vast majority of buildings, as we have all different types, just like we learned with City of Tempe having multiple different types of buildings. So we're able to look in here and say, okay, let's come up with a flexible plan where we have options for EV parking straight in there, looking at EV ready, looking at EV capable, but adding more flexibility so that different buildings with different types and different needs can really address this, but have more opportunities to do that. Next slide. So Clark Park, we looked at this project, and again, this one vastly different than the other ones, where we have more of a community outreach type project. We have a lot of landscape, a lot of public interaction here. And as we went through design here, we ran into the renewables requirements that we see in the IGCC code, which again, renewables, especially when we look at green codes, can be one of the more costly aspects of a project. And again, looking at this is, how important is this? How does this fit into Tempe? How does this fit into our climate and our projects? And again, identifying this is an important part of the green code, and it's important to Tempe. And in our climate, it's an important part of having green buildings. And so again, looking at ways that we can address it and come up with unique opportunities to make it flexible and work within here so that we can address many buildings with this code. So starting to look at how we could have solar actually on the building, looking at having solar ready areas, looking at having opportunities for RECs or even offsite production if it can be produced on another building. So coming up with more opportunities to make sure that it makes sense for buildings. That was one of the main goals that we wanted to address as we went through these 3 projects, was how can we learn from these to make a successful code that can be cost effective, meet real valuable goals of the city, and be able to be reproduced and done on many buildings.
Thanks, Greg. Next slide, we wanted to mention, as I had referenced in my opening slide, kind of this is some of the action that we are asking for in the next couple months. Again, right now we are in the public involvement phase, so we're seeking feedback through these public meetings and through board and commission meetings and other stakeholder meetings. This will go through a formal adoption process later this fall. But one of the specific asks that we will be putting forward to our council is for all city buildings, many of which we've already been building green, but we will ask for a commitment from the council to build or construct all of our city buildings with this code in the future. So that will be a formal action that we will ask the council to do. We want to, again, make the initial offering of this code voluntary to the general public. And we will watch, assuming we get this adopted, we will watch and observe how it's engaged. We will tweak the language in the code as necessary from those engagements as we move forward. But really, we want the city to be a leader and to build our buildings with this green code, and then offer this to all the other private developers in the community, if they so choose, to engage this code. And we will continue to observe how it in real time and real life, how it works with our private development community. Next steps and timeline. So we are out on the street doing all this public engagement right now. It's also online for public comment through our survey mechanism, the Tempe Forum, until the end of this month. You can see those dates here. We have another public meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. And then we also have the Sustainability and Economic Vitality Council Committee next Monday, as well as the Sustainability and Resilience Commission next week to present to and get feedback through those avenues. And then again, we have a position posted that's open right now to bring on a green plan review specialist for our building safety team. And then it'll go through a formal process to adopt this. It goes through a formal process, several hearings at regular council meetings, and you can see the dates listed here, as well as through a building safety technical advisory group to get their feedback. That will happen in the next couple months. Ultimately, we're looking at November 9th for final council adoption, as well as the council request for that resolution to build all of our buildings in the future with this green code. So that happens November 9th, and that's a critical date. We will continue to observe, assuming this code is adopted, we will continue to watch and change the language as necessary in the code and really learn from what we hear and from the community, as well as what we hear from developers that use the code to build. And with that, we can, I think, unless there's other comments from the team members, we can open it up for questions.
And feel free for questions. You can put them in the chat and we can address them, or raise your hand or come off mute. We're a small enough group that we're happy to take those anyway. Or it looks like, there we go. I was gonna say, you did
Yeah.
such a great job, but Jake's got one for us. Jake.
Yeah, I really appreciate here seeing that you're so adaptable and flexible to the input of the community, as well as the different councils and different people who might have a stake. I was curious about the adaptability and flexibility and just response to the emergence of what could happen moving forward, to adapting these to temperatures and different trends that occur over time. I know that with the 31 days over 110 this year, that it's been pretty intense on infrastructure, both from local businesses, as well as even taking your car in right now, like it's all backed up. So more my question is there adaptability or flexibility in modifying these as time goes on, or certain points where we might be able to adjust them to future needs that might arise?
So I'm sure Mike's got some thoughts. I would like to just say a couple of things, Jake. Yeah, I mean, we have a zoning and development code at the city that is updated and modified periodically. And I would look at this green code with the same hope that we would modify based upon conditions that change, based upon city policies, community direction, all that kind of feedback. You know, we just had a record-breaking summer, as you cited. And so I think that this green building code helps to address some of those issues, that extreme heat and drought. You know, we're looking at, green building code that can help conserve water. And we're looking at a green building code that can literally help to decrease our carbon footprint, our fossil fuel emissions, and all those things should help in this effort to address what we experienced this summer. So I would like to say that we're open to changes as needed. I will let Mike offer more information.
Sure. Jake, thanks for the question. So technical codes in the city are, we actually go through, and this is a national based code that we've amended and put our own spin on. And there'll be a new version coming out for 2024. And we will be looking at all new codes from the top to the bottom and taking a look at these through 2024, with looking at rolling out any new amendments in 25 for this too.
Thank you both. That's really great to hear that it's a living document. I know that goals are absolutely necessary, but I know sometimes they can become prohibitive if they become too stationary. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the group? And if not, again, in the chat, I did put the link to the forum where you can provide specific feedback on the chapters and you can see the language that was suggested. Eric, did you have anything else for the group?
I do not. Sorry, I need to unmute. I don't. I would encourage you to spread the word about commenting on the Tempe Forum. Again, we have the meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. And then keep an eye on the dates for this to go to council. And you can see them on the page here. The October 12th would be the first hearing. November 9th would be the second. And thank you for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.